Welcome to this bonus episode of Timm Talk, the podcast sometimes about the DC animated universe, co-created by Bruce Timm. I'm Chris Lord.
I'm Cameron Dexter.
And Cameron, we are here to discuss Wonder Woman 1984. And so along those lines, I have a question for you, which is, am I right in thinking that if you had one wish, your deepest heart's desire, it would be that the entire world became a animated live-action hybrid?
Oh, that's tricky. I didn't think on that scale.
I feel like if that were your wish, the cost of it, the thing most precious to you, would be your love of live-action animated hybrids, and so it would just be
I just wouldn't care. I'd be so furious with them.
You'd be so
because
angry.
Because in the movie they mention it's the monkey paw effect. I'm like, but this isn't the monkey paw effect. The monkey paw isn't losing the thing you love most. It's not the thing you love most. It's the monkey's paw is all about the trickery of your words.
Yeah, it's like the irony, whatever like loophole of irony they can find.
So if the wish was, I wish the world would be animation live action hybrid, it would be just like the worst cartoons.
Yeah. Everyone's least favorite cartoons would invade the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It would just be all of the 1970s Scooby-Doo knockoffs.
with Scrappy-Doo and what was it?
No, not the Scooby-Doo not the Scooby-Doo sequels. Hanna-Barbera created 7 or 8 other versions of Scooby-Doo.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Like the Ghost Gang, the Ghoul School, whatever they're called. Where it's the exact same format. Just like slightly different redesigned characters and a different breed of dog.
It would be the Ghostbusters, not the real Ghostbusters based off the movie, but the weird show Ghostbusters, and they drove around in a jalopy.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, so we are talking about Wonder Woman 1984. It's weird. Like I think we'll just say up front, just presume everything's going to involve spoilers going forward.
Yes.
It's also weird though, because I feel like in some ways it's not a movie you can spoil, because I think we kind of knew everything that was going to happen already.
No, I mean, I don't think the movie was exactly what I was expecting. Because we had theorized before, and I thought Cheetah was going to be kind of and she kind of was. She was kind of the minor villain, and Maxwell Lord being the grander villain. Mm-hmm. But I was expecting Cheetah to be like the Act 2 villain.
Oh,
where she
okay,
kind of doesn't really do anything until the end.
I mean, nothing really happens till the end.
Yeah, I know. I watched this with my family, and some members of my family left because they're like, they've been watching for an hour and 45 minutes, and the most we got was a single gun shooting at a plane that then went invisible. Yeah, I actually also ended up watching with my family, and credit to them for having the patience to stick it out. I mean, I think it's already becoming clear we were both rather disappointed by this. Yes, I have the same problem that you have with the first one. I loved the first 2 acts.
Okay.
Especially Act 1. If you end it after that intro sequence, mm-hmm. the Themysciran Olympics,
yes,
whatever it is, that 10 out of 10. Ended after that 10 minutes, make that a short in itself. Mm-hmm. That was gorgeous.
That part was pretty cool. Yeah.
And then after that, you kind of get a dip, and it kind of plateaued for me for a little bit, and I was still enjoying it. I was still enjoying the story. But yeah, once you kind of hit Act 3 and it gets to the global scale, then that's when I'm lost.
Yeah, I found the whole thing just underwhelming and really bloated. I'm really glad they brought back Steve Trevor, because I think Chris Pine brought in some much needed charm mm-hmm. Into the film, and he and Gal Gadot do have great chemistry together, and I kind of just wish more of the movie was them. They kept pulling away to spend so much time with Maxwell Lord and with Cheetah, aka Barbara Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig, and I just found none of their stuff very interesting or compelling. And I was like, go back to the stuff I actually give a shit about. And
especially with Maxwell Lord and his kid, in no moment did I believe that was his real kid.
No, So like I said, I watched with my family. And my dad made comments like, "We finally have a character with the same last name as us, and it's this guy."
Yeah.
Like, this is what we get.
Our great ancestor, Maxwell Lord.
Maxwell Lord. Yeah, I think Pedro Pascal's great in general, and I think Kristen Wiig is super talented as well. I wasn't really compelled by either of their stories at all.
I was and yeah, I agree. I was like building up this anticipation inside me of like, oh man, I know what Cheetah can become, and I know what Barbara can be, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be awesome. And like the same, like I understand what Maxwell can be, and this power that he has now. And then and I feel like neither of their stories really landed that expectation they were setting up.
No, yeah, what little I know about Cheetah from like a little bit of DCAU, and then I've read some of the Wonder Woman comics that feature her. Like, I thought they did a fairly decent job with that, bringing that character to life. Like, I don't know if there's that much material there even in the comics with her, but I at least appreciated that they did kind of set up that there was a friendship of sorts between the two of them, and that
I loved that. I wish that played a bigger part. Really, because that kind of had to halt once Steve Trevor came back. Yeah, and they just had no relationship anymore.
Yeah, like I don't know. And I mean, they got to their friendship relatively quickly. I don't know if it would have been better served if they had been friends right from the beginning, but I guess they really had to establish that, Diana is completely alone in this world. Like, she has no, and they kind of briefly recap roughly what's been going on the last 60 some odd years. Looks like, there's a photo at one point of her, and I'm presuming that's Etta Candy when she's a lot older, like traveling the world or something like that. And so I think, she's gone. So she has no one left. So she's just living her own life and kind of like doing superhero working on the sly while working at the Smithsonian.
Did you understand in that 15-minute sequence that this was the 80s? Did they throw enough at you for you to be like, what version of the 80s is this? Is this the 1990s 80s? No, they didn't wear that in the 90s. What about if like the 1970s 80s? No. They didn't have arcades like this.
Yeah.
I've never seen such like, and like I loved it. Like, I'll fucking eat that up all day. But just like they threw up in my mouth the like 80s culture.
Oh yeah.
And it was I loved it, but it was so much.
Yeah, shy of seeing someone snort a big old line of coke, they hit every 80s trope they possibly could.
Right, and that just happened off screen.
That was all happening off screen.
Yeah, it was still there. Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, I let's talk about the opening a little bit, actually, because I think there is kind of an interesting juxtaposition of the Themyscira sequence with, like, the crime fighting sequence. And so you really, really love that opening.
Yeah, I think just the score. Because I'm a Hans Zimmer whore.
A Zim head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he also did Avatar, and so it had a lot of little things from like the Avatar soundtrack that I still love.
Wait, he did James Cameron Avatar?
Yeah.
Did he? I thought that was James Horner.
I think you're right.
I mean, because James Horner was James Cameron's go-to composer.
You might be right. Hold on. You are right. Scratch that.
I mean, look, Cameron, I would have believed you. I would have believed you because you're the only person on the planet that actually cares about that Avatar film. But you were talking to film scores.
I know. And you were all right to correct me.
I mean, look, Zimmer's good. I mean, most people I think could spot a Hans Zimmer score if they hear it. I think some of his most famous stuff is his work with Christopher Nolan. So Interstellar, the Dark Knight trilogy, the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels 2 and 3 at least. I think. I guess he did 4 as well. I think. Yeah.
Are you forgetting the one that I want to talk about that I just remembered existed?
Gladiator?
Lion King.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he did do the Lion King score back in the day.
Oh, God. No, did he also... All right, well, that's juxtaposed horribly. He also did Boss Baby.
Hey, sometimes you just need a paycheck.
Yeah, sometimes you just need that that trip to France.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to just like get a paycheck and have a nice easy gig so you can save your energy for things like Wonder Woman 1984.
Yes.
So, but I will give you that the opening sequence was scored really well, and it's a fun setup. I mean, you described it as like the Themysciran Olympics. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, and it's very fun, and so it's all of the great warriors of the Mascara, and then a young Diana that comes up and tries to compete with them. And that part, I was just like, okay, like, you know, she's a kid, but she's supposed to be the best of them, and like, but she's also like 11 in this.
Yeah.
So like, I was hoping, I wanted her to just be like behind them, but be still being able to like almost keep up. Like that was what I wanted. Not her to be in the front the entire time.
The front of the entire time. I mean, she is like, you know, the greatest warrior Themyscira has. And I'm trying to remember because I haven't seen the first film in a really long time. But did they establish in the first film that Ares was her dad?
Yes.
I think so, right? Because her origin varies so much, and I can't remember which one's which. But I thought in the film they established that Ares was her dad and that she is half god, which is why she's so much more powerful than the rest of them.
Yeah, she's either Ares' kid or she was Zeus's kid.
Okay, because she makes a comment in this movie about how, you know, her dad made Themyscira disappear, and she's been learning how to do that trick. And I was like, oh, I forgot that they established that she had a dad.
Yeah, because normally she's like formed from clay, right?
Yeah, that's her original origin was that, Hippolyta formed her from clay, and then I think some versions have her formed from clay, but also haven't been formed with Hippolyta did it with either Zeus or Ares. Like there's so many different versions, but I can't remember what the movie one was. But yeah, I mean, regardless, like it does do a good job of establishing that she is, you know, leagues above other warriors who have trained, you know, twice as long as she has. It was cute. It was definitely cute to see her.
I just Googled it.
Okay.
Diana is the daughter of Zeus and Hippolyta.
Zeus and Hippolyta. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. It had to be one of them.
It always is.
Yeah, I can't remember all this stuff. It's too confusing. But yeah, like it is cute to see her like be leagues ahead of everyone else. And you know, you said it's the Olympics, like even to the point of them having like the Olympic colors, which I thought was a kind of a clever little nod.
Yeah, I didn't notice this until watching the credits, but there's a couple shots where I'm like, is that Diana in the background? Like, no, like she's supposed to be the kid. But then I'm like, oh, Jessie Graff is one of the Olympians competing with them, being Gal Gadot's stunt double.
Oh,
and so they look so similar.
Okay.
And so there's like two shots. No, sorry. I didn't think it was Diana. I thought it was Supergirl. And I'm like, what is Supergirl doing here? But
what is she doing here?
Yeah, Jessie Graff is like is kind of like the go-to stunt woman right now in Hollywood, and so she's everybody.
Oh, okay.
And so you see her, and there's it's like all of them lined up with Diana up front, and I'm like, hold on, who is? I'm like, okay, yeah, it's Jessie, and she's great.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, they throw her in there to do some stuff in the background. But yeah, I mean, it is a fun sequence. Like, I'm trying not to be nitpicky, but did you find some of the CGI in the film, but even that opening sequence, like a little bit dodgy?
I did, and especially though, like the anti-gravity of it all throughout the entire film, by the end I just let it go, and I was kind of excited, like, oh, it's not like human physics. They're not trying to make it real, and like that's. And I think we've been so trained, especially through DC, where everything has to be realistic. And so when you see someone do these insane jumps or these like the super speed run, which is almost as bad as like, I think it's maybe a little worse than the Flash in his show.
Yeah, you're right. The physics felt wonky a lot of the time.
Everyone felt very light. And I was fine when it was like other things falling and like that, the shot, the juxtaposed shot we'll talk about in a second, when that car is speeding off and it's about to hit the girl and you just see Diana just like lightly tap the car and it goes spinning. Like, I thought that was cute. I enjoyed that amount of physics. Or the end when it's what's her name? The original Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah, that's like the big spoiler in all of this is that Linda Carter has a completely unnecessary cameo appearance in the credits.
As Asteria. And she just like barely catches the pole. Like that stuff I'm fine with. I think that's like cute. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. It's the gravity and weight of everything just felt a little too off for what we've been trained for.
Yeah, and I think that is, a symptom of a general tonal problem that's going on.
Right, that's
in
a
this movie.
Hollywood problem. Like that shit happens all the time in Speed Racer. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Like that car just did a triple backflip and then knocked another car out of the air and didn't lose its momentum at all.
Yeah, and you're right. Like in a super formalist, right? We always forget this, right? Yes, we got it right. In a super formalist film like Speed Racer, it makes sense. Like the physics are supposed to be kind of crazy and wonky and over the top and animated. But this movie can't decide if it wants to be realistic or campy. Mm-hmm. And I think that general tonal imbalance is, also shown in their weird approach to like the CGI and the physics on it and stuff. Because like sometimes the CGI looks really good, but sometimes it looks really, really bad, and the physics looks really, really bad. And you're like, is this intentional or not? I can't tell because I don't know what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I think I was also just like so overjoyed of seeing a new superhero film.
Yeah.
That also like played a big part in that opening scene. It was like, oh man, like I remember big budget CGI things.
Right. And I don't know. I wasn't, I think for me, I was like kind of, this felt like work watching it a little bit, which is bad. Like, and look, I think we can get into it at some point too, but in ideal circumstances to watch this, right? It's like, I think I would have been more forgiving had I seen it in a theater, because the problem is when you watch it at home, it's competing for your attention with everything else. And like, we both watched it Christmas Day. We're both with our families. I'm with a 12-week-old golden retriever puppy. Like, if there is something that's going to get my attention, it's that damn dog.
Right.
Like, way more than this movie. And like, I had that moment where I'm like, we're sitting and watching the film, like, I'd kind of rather like be sitting outside having a snack, like hanging with my family than watching this right now, even though we're watching it together. And that didn't help. But it just, it didn't really capture my attention. Even that opening sequence, I kind of liked it, but then it felt weird when contrasted with like you said, like the 80s vomit sequence and then the weird Wonder Woman sneakily doing superhero heroics in the background stuff. Mm-hmm.
I think it's also that she's in her uniform doing the sneaky stuff. Like she can be in civilian clothes and tap the car.
In the most conspicuous costume on the planet.
I mean, but to be fair, in the 80s, even that is not the most conspicuous costume we saw.
That's true. That is far from the most garish look in the entire thing. And I say garish like I didn't love it. I love the costume in this, actually.
Yes, same.
I think it's, I mean, not that there was a lot of competition. It's the best looking Wonder Woman live action costume we've ever had. I did like that they brightened up the colors a little bit on it, and it looks perfect. I mean, that is like a great version of the Wonder Woman costume brought to life.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was some article, maybe you shared with me. I don't remember where I originally saw it. That talks about like the Greek influence they took on her outfit for the past two films, mm-hmm. and how like they really tried to step away from the campy version from the comics and in the animated shows and in the live action show, mm-hmm. and like what would a modern Greek armor look like.
Oh, okay,
and they kind of use that as the base for these new Wonder Woman looks.
I mean, that's brilliant, and I think it works really, really well.
Yeah, and I just love that idea. Even if it's not executed like Greek armor, and it's still executed like female armor. Yeah. What do we need to protect? The boobs. All right, good. Anything else? Nope, that's the only important part.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, I mean, Gal Gadot is one of the most beautiful women on the planet and in incredible shape. And, that costume, that armor definitely like helps accentuate that. But she still, in this movie, didn't, at least to me, didn't feel super sexualized. I don't know how you felt about it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
I think like to me, the most sexual shot was her like when she's getting out of the car at the gala and her dress, and I'm like, that's a fucking gorgeous dress.
Oh my God, isn't it though?
Yeah.
Like,
And
holy
that
shit.
felt like the only moment, and even that, she's not even like sexualized. That's just a good dress.
Yeah, it's like whenever we see her, I feel like the intent is to like take your breath away and for her to look stunning, but like stunning not necessarily being exclusively sexy. It's more just like, oh my God, like this woman looks like a goddess.
Yeah.
And they do a really good job with that. And, I mean, obviously for me, the most sexualized moments was whenever Steve Trevor had his bare arms out.
That's true.
There was no shirtless.
He's in that 80s tank top.
Look, my favorite part of the entire film was probably the wardrobe change sequence.
Yep, I knew you were gonna say that. It was like 3 outfits too many for me. I mean, like, I love a good wardrobe change sequence. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorite things in films. When Static does it, it's great. When Supergirl did it in her show, it was great.
Yeah,
but they did like 7 outfits, and again, that is them just vomiting 80s culture into our mouths.
Yeah, just look how bad the looks were back then. But and it was a moment where, again, Chris Pine knows how to play that character, and they know how to play him very tonally, consistently, and really well, because he brought the most humor to the whole thing. And like, maybe because he's a slight outsider to this world himself, but like, his weird, like, kind of embracing of how bad the looks are sort of thing, like that whole sequence to me was super funny. And he's so charming and so likable. And I thought it was interesting because what's meant to be more like the kind of comedic beats, especially with Kristen Wiig, to me didn't land. Like, she is, let's call it what it is. She's Batman Returns Catwoman light.
Yes.
She goes through almost the exact same arc. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But her opening bits where we're seeing just how like weird and awkward and like antisocial she is, I wasn't sure what was supposed to be going on there. They weren't funny. They were just really uncomfortable and awkward to watch more than anything else. How did you feel about like her early sequences, especially?
Well, it's funny because I saw a lot of myself in the early sequences.
Oh, Cameron, no. No. You're much more socially housebroken than that.
Sometimes. But no, I get it. It definitely was a little over the top. And like, I think it made sense with the guy, because there's like the guy in the office she's trying to talk to.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know who she is. She's obviously never met. She's only worked there for 4 days, they said. Yeah. So like, yeah, of course no one knows you. That's not because you're awkward. It's because you're new.
Yeah.
And we see there is, 120 people in this one office apparently that are all guys just staring at you.
Yeah.
But like when the boss came in, that was like, okay, this is a little much. Like, you should know. Maybe if she's just like holding up a photo, like that would be fine. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm looking for, like, do you know who I'm like, oh yeah, her. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like it took it too many steps too far to still be like really plausible. And I think that's started for me to feel like where the tonal inconsistencies were really starting to come to play. Like, both her and Maxwell Lord are these super awkward characters, and they're really kind of not bad at what they do. I mean, Maxwell Lord actually is bad at what he does. Like, he's this aspiring businessman, like TV personality who like doesn't have the actual capability to back it up.
Yeah, that twist I loved. I was not expecting him to be a failure, because he's selling himself so well at the start.
Yeah, and I don't know how I didn't necessarily love that. It was definitely something different. I guess to me, I don't really know much about Maxwell Lord in the comics. Like, I know he played a big part in Identity Crisis, I want to say.
Identity was Dr. Light's story.
I thought it involved him too. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But like, what I know about him is that he is supposed to be like not on the same level as a Lex Luthor, but a very. I always was under the impression that he was a very capable, like, ill intent business figure in the DC universe. So
yeah, my mental space for him was somewhere between Lex and like what's his name, Maximilius Zeus.
Maxie Zeus, yeah.
Maxie Zeus, yeah. I thought he would like land somewhere in between there and like the
okay,
smart
yeah.
and the crazy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's kind of what I had always kind of pictured for him. So it was different to make him this really unsuccessful businessman, but I also kind of felt like there was nothing distinct about him. Like I don't, from what I understand, like this idea about, because the whole plot of this movie is that they come across this stone that grants wishes. You made reference to it as a movie. It's kind of like a monkey's paw of sorts. And it was kind of weird that became like his whole thing, was that he became this wish granter, because I felt like that was unique to the film and had nothing to do with the comic character, which is fine, but also I felt like it didn't work that well.
I was on board, like I said, I was on board with the scale of it when it was just kind of smaller things. And he's like, he wishes to be, successful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's creative. And like, there's very creative things you can do with this. And then even that like mini twist when he goes to the like other oil guy and he's like, I want your oil. He's like, I don't have any oil. I sold it all already. And he's like, and then he like pauses and hesitates and he's like, oh, then I'll just take these guys like that. They're mine now.
Yeah. I liked that. That was clever. Show like he's still not that good, but he's thinking on his feet at least.
Yeah. And then it was once you passed that, that's when it got, the scale just grew to, because we talk about this all the time. Like not every superhero film needs to be a planetary scale problem.
Yeah.
And that's why we love, I mean, Ant-Man, the first Ant-Man, I think is one of our favorite examples.
It's fun.
A very small story.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Exactly. Yeah, I think both these Wonder Woman films ultimately suffer from the same thing, which is like they felt compelled to have to make the finale feel like this really big scale thing, and it stands in such stark contrast to the rest of the movie. And and I can kind of see the need to do that to some degree, and maybe I'm reading into something that's not part of their creative thinking, but like one could criticize a Wonder Woman film if the scale is always small in comparison to say like a Superman movie or a Batman movie.
That's true.
Or
yes.
like, any other male hero, you're like, well, the film is kind of telling us that she's not as capable of handling these threats. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think the movie shows that she's incredibly capable, more capable, I think, than some of the other heroes we get. I just feel like what makes her so interesting is she has more personality, and I think has more personal investment in what's going on. Like, I really believe her altruism because of her background coming from this idyllic island where everyone's helping each other out and it's very supportive, and she really wants to make the world a better place, and especially given all that she sacrificed to do that, I really believe that that's what her intent is, and I wanted the stakes at the end to feel personal to her, and they didn't at all. And I feel like in either film, most of the story she has a personal involvement in up until the third act, and then it just becomes big, crazy global scale, and I just don't care as much.
Yeah, I think I also misunderstood the rules of the wish for a little bit, because they say like you either break the stone or you undo your wish. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I thought like, oh, only one person has to undo their wish and then everything's fine. Like, yeah, you selfish person, like undo your wish and that's all you have to do. And then it's like, okay, everyone has to undo their wish. All right, fine. Yeah. But okay, so for the ending, did Cheetah undo her wish? Because I want to think no. I want to think that Cheetah is still around as a good villain, because I think she still has capacity for something, especially now that she's not in her Cheetah look.
It's unclear because, yeah, like the whole story builds to, we think they're just going to destroy Maxwell Lord, but of course, like they can't destroy him because he has a kid, so we're supposed to care about him. Ugh. So instead, like,
yeah, I did not enjoy that sequence at the end.
No. So now they have this worldwide broadcast MacGuffin, basically, as a way for him to like touch everyone on the planet and grant everyone's wish. And so when they go to, everyone renounces their wish, including Maxwell Lord, which I'm like, I thought what they're going to do is a whole thing where if he renounced his wish, then, all of the effects that came as a result of him being the wishing stone would get undone.
Right. That's what I was expecting, because now, and this kind of goes to a point that I'm sure we're going to talk about eventually, is Batman does his research. Batman is technically alive for this, I think. 84, he's probably born at least, because he's like because this is like old, gruff, Ben Affleck Batman.
So he's what? He's 45. I think he's supposed to be 45 approximately in BVS, which is, we'll call that, for the sake of simple math, 2015. So yeah, he would have been born in 1970s. He's 14, 15.
Yeah, so his parents are dead. So he for sure wished for his parents to come back.
Yeah.
And there's no way he's renouncing that wish.
No.
Like, if we know one thing about Batman, once he gets his parents back, it's game over.
Now, I will say this, though. It would have required him to be watching a television, which 14-year-old Bruce Wayne would not be watching a television. He'd be outside, like, kicking trees or doing push-ups or something.
Okay, then what wish did Alfred make? Because he's watching. He's watching while he's cooking.
He's like, I don't know. Like, Alfred's a good guy. He would probably just wish for Bruce to be happy, right?
He had to renounce it.
Yeah, it's like it's all Alfred's fault. That's why he became Batman.
Yeah. That'd be a great setup for the next Batman film.
Yeah,
like that's the origin of Batfleck, not Batfleck. Rob at Bat and Bat.
Mm-hmm.
No, I like the idea of just like, oh man, I wish there was a faster way to do this laundry. And that's like he was like the inventor of the separate, like the combo washer dryer unit.
The 2-in-1.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, this is so much more convenient.
And then he had to give it all away. His one true love.
No, please don't take it away.
I just wish the silver were polished already. But yeah, like I thought that was going to be the whole thing of like, as soon as Maxwell Lord did it, then all the other ones went away. And then that could have left open the possibility. Oh no, I guess that wouldn't have worked because Cheetah made her wish first.
Right, and that's why I thought she would still be... sorry. So to finish my point from before we got on our Rob at Bat and Bat tangent.
Yes.
Bruce has done his research into Diana. And so does no one talk about this like crazy day in 1984 where the world almost ended?
Yeah.
Where a guy wished for a girl to die and she did, and then she came back to life and he was in Ireland for a second, getting beaten up by 19 teens police officers.
Yeah, I that thought also occurred to me as I was watching it. It's like the stakes get so out of hand. Like the whole world basically is like on the brink of collapse.
Because like if you shoot a nuke, even if the nuke disappears, you still shot a nuke.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
Like the tension between U.S. and USSR is like you can't come back from that.
No, and that's exactly it. It's like it's I don't really feel like people, their attitudes would change after this, right? So because they set up the idea that the lasso of truth can not only reveal truth, but it can show truth to someone who holds it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I guess what's happening there at the end is that Wonder Woman has lassoed Maxwell Lord. She is talking to him and revealing the truth to him, and because he's connected to all the people on the planet, the truth is also being revealed to them, and that's why they decide to undo their wish. And I'm like, this is really cheesy, one, and two, it doesn't feel like that would undo the just absolute pandemonium that was unleashed as a result of all this stuff, because to your point, the stakes were insane. Like they literally launched nukes.
Yeah, there were nukes in the air.
Yeah, and sure, they just...
The Nile had dried up. We didn't even talk about that.
Like, I just didn't really feel like...
Who wished for the Nile to dry up? Whose wish was that?
Well, it wasn't the Nile. It was the guy just wished he could get his kingdom back, so, like, walls erected around where...
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
And I guess the walls...
It made its own dam.
Yeah, the wall... No, but the weird thing is when the walls go away, which we don't see them appear, they just appear, and then, like, people are like, oh, there's walls now. That was kind of handled funky.
And there was a car perched on top of one of the walls.
Yeah, right. But it's like once the walls go away, then I guess the walls were built over riverbeds, because then like the river started flowing through the pathway that the wall had taken. It didn't seem very fully fleshed out. And what was exactly the theme of the film? Like, you can't find truth in lies. That's more or less what Robin Wright said?
I think it's you can't take shortcuts.
Okay.
Because everything, okay, so here's what I wanted Maxwell's story to be, because I think he had two competing stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a small part which I really liked, and I think that should have been his moment. And then from there, he didn't know what to do, and that's when like you bring in the bigger story if you had to. But you have aspiring oil tycoon Maxwell Lord, and then you have basically TV evangelist Maxwell Lord.
Yeah.
And I think instead of him flipping through the oil tycoon magazine at the beginning, because that's the persona he's trying to be.
Yeah.
He should actually have like the TV guide, and he flips and he sees his time slot is now gone. Mm-hmm. And so all of this wish making, all of this power he's getting has just been to get the attention of the other TV evangelist that took his spot. And then he gets this, and like when he gets the spot back, that's when he's like, I'm successful again. I've done it. Mm-hmm. And then someone else comes in, and then they kind of like not trick him, because you can't have another villain that's even crazier than him.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that his kid was also already proud of him, and so he wasn't like, there's nothing he could do to like win his kid's love that he already had.
Yeah, he could just stop being
he couldn't
shit.
afford something. If the kid was a teenage brat, like I think that'd be a funnier version. Where he's just like, yeah. I just don't want to deal with you, Dad. He's like, I wish I could figure out a way to deal with my kid. Yeah. What do you want? I'm on TV. I'm an oil tycoon. You want a yacht? Here's a yacht. You want a motorcycle?
Oh yeah, I could just stop being a bad dad.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Dad, like I don't want a yacht. This one's red.
Yeah, and this is speculation on my part, but I feel like how this came about was, the main creatives on this, like Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns and the writers and producers all sat down and like, okay, what would be the most like compelling thing for Wonder Woman, like for Diana in a sequel? And it's, well, she lost Steve, so like how could we bring her back? Like, how could we bring him back? It's like, well, that would be her number one wish. Like, oh, well, what if we made the whole movie about like wishes? And of course he can't still be around after this, because for whatever Justice League continuity counts and BVS continuity counts, like he's gone by that point. So it had to be a temporary thing. It's like, oh, it's like build a whole film around like granting your deepest heart's desire. And I just don't, that's not interesting to me.
Okay. Here's yes, I agree. Here's another idea that I just thought of. So when he's making these wishes, he doesn't have the big goal as his end goal. Mm-hmm. All of the problems that come are because of the next wish that he has granted. And so he wishes for the oil, and then suddenly all of the U.S. people are on him, or all the government people are on him. He's like, oh, well, how do I wish for all this to go away? Oh, I'll just wish to be the president, which I guess he does. And again, I don't like that. I don't want it to get to the scale. But if it's like his wishes are reactionary and not like, I just need more power. He's like, oh, well, how do I get them off my back? I'll just tell the president to get them off my back. And it's like, okay, I wish to have the president's powers. And then someone else comes in and is like, sir, you have to deal with these situations. Like the USSR has a missile in Cuba. He's like, oh, well, just put a missile closer to them, and that'll tell him to stop. It's like, they just fired the missile. He's like, oh, fuck, I guess we should fire the missile too. Like, he just gets so overwhelmed with the power. I think that could be a better way for him to be.
Yeah,
because he's faking his way through it the entire time.
Yeah, you're right. If he's constantly just trying to like fix the problems he's creating himself, then it becomes interesting. Because otherwise, like, I wasn't quite sure what his motivation was to keep granting wishes, other than I guess he felt compelled to do so because he was now the Stone.
Well, I think at the end it was just because he was dying.
Oh yeah, I guess.
And so he like because that's the only thing that he asked for was like, keep making wishes so I can stay alive.
And even that was kind of weird to me. Like they never established why the granting the wishes would kill him. Like,
yeah, like the stone didn't like crack or anything. I think if it showed that something in the beginning when like Diana or Barbara made their wish, there was like a crack that formed in the gem.
Yeah, we never got a sense that it was destructive to the gem to keep granting wishes, and it took them too long to establish that there was a price to granting the wishes. Yes. Because, it's like the first thing that Maxwell does, right? He goes out to that oil guy. The guy's like, I don't have any oil. He's like, well, I'll just take your security then, and then they'll come kill you. And I'm like, wait, what power does he have to compel people to join him? And it wasn't until like 15 minutes later when they explained like, oh, the stone also takes what you find most precious. Like, oh, I guess that's why he had the ability to compel them to join him. Otherwise, I didn't think he had any additional powers.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Diana stuff, you don't really, because you never see her get shot with a bullet in original Wonder Woman or in Justice League. And so I wasn't entirely sure if she was bulletproof or not.
Yeah.
Because that's the first hint that she's losing her powers, that she gets grazed with a bullet.
Well, the first one is that she had a hard time breaking the lock at Maxwell's
Okay.
office.
I didn't even think about that. I thought someone had just wished for security, the
Wish
best
for better
security in the world.
I think that ultimately speaks to the big problem with this movie is it's hard to tell what was intentional and what was sloppy.
Yeah.
You see it everywhere. We talked about it in the CGI and the weird physics and in the tone, like the sequence immediately after the Olympics, which I did like, but then that whole I guess we'll call it the Star Court. I mean, I just think of Stranger Things at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah,
the Star Court sequence, she stops the bad guy, the robbery of the ancient gem sort of thing. To me, that felt really tonally slapsticky almost.
Very much so. Where I was almost waiting for her to hit something off a table, almost hit a pie off a table to hit one of the guys in the face, using her lasso.
And maybe that was intentional on their part because of the 1980s tone, but it did feel in stark contrast to that first movie, which is so, for the most part, is so grounded, except for the third act. But you think about that No Man's Land sequence, which is one of
the pinnacle of DC.
It's honestly, it is one of the best superhero sequences of all time, a superhero movie of all time. It to me, that one scene is enough to make me overall like that movie, even though I really, really don't like the ending on it. But that is a brilliant piece of movie making on so many levels. And I think it says so much about her character that in this incredibly dark time, she is, a beacon of light and that she's a badass. And some people don't love the electric cello theme. I fucking love it, especially in that sequence in the No Man's Land. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing in this movie that came even close to as being iconic or as impactful or as character driven as that.
I don't know, when she throws the little girl into the giant teddy bear, that was pretty cute.
See, I mean, that's it. That's exactly it. I'm just it felt like in some ways the movie wasn't giving Diana enough credit. It's this is the sort of stuff she's doing, is breaking up robberies in a mall in Washington DC. She's so much more capable than just that. And maybe she was trying to be under the radar, but that wasn't emphasized enough to justify her heroics being so lame. I don't know how else to describe them.
Yeah, I think it's and it's something that I briefly touched on at the start. She doesn't need to suit up for this stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's because she's in uniform, we expect her to have these grand things. And what if she just didn't put on the uniform until Steve Trevor came back?
Yeah.
And it's now Wonder Woman has been in hiding for so many years, and it's partially because to her, Wonder Woman died with Steve Trevor.
Yeah.
And so, maybe when you see the watch, maybe her bracelets are there too. Mm-hmm. And she won't put them on because that was for him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
When she's doing all, she can have the lasso, sure, that's just a part of her.
Yeah.
But then, when they go to the Middle East to get the oil guy, that's the first time she puts the suit back on.
Yeah.
It's okay, Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor are back. And then it's the her riding the airwaves, but it's her being able to embrace being Wonder Woman without Steve Trevor. Yeah. It's something that she hadn't done yet.
And maybe they were trying to avoid having another film where it took, 45, 50 minutes for her to be in costume the way the first one did. But I didn't, the early sequence of her in costume didn't add enough for me to feel like it had to be there. The only action sequence that I actually thought was even
Mm-hmm.
semi-decent was the car chase out in Egypt.
Yeah.
I thought that was done pretty well for the most part. There was no other action sequences that really jumped out at me as being particularly great. Like there's the fight in the White House, which I didn't really care about. There was the fight with Cheetah, which also felt just kind of underwhelming. I didn't feel the emotional stakes at all.
With Barb, we haven't touched a lot on Barbara yet. And I feel like her sense was like losing her humanity.
Yeah,
That never really came through until
No.
they said it.
Dude, they had to say it. They had to tell us that that's what had happened to her. And I just think that the rules they built around this film weren't strong enough to follow through. And so they had to artificially escalate things in a way that I just didn't find compelling.
Yeah, because so her arc is she's this kind of no one who just wants everyone's attention. And then the next time we see her, she makes the wish and she's like embracing everyone's attention. And then you never see her like feel uncomfortable. And I think that's like, as someone who was very uncomfortable through his entire life and is still.
Oh, Cameron.
When you hit that point where like people pay attention to you all of a sudden, it is very uncomfortable. Like you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And she like embraced it so easily. Like that's not how you if you've never been the center of attention and you're suddenly the center of attention, you don't immediately adapt to it. It takes a while to get used to that.
Yeah. And I think that the obvious comparison, and I already made it earlier in the episode, was to Selena Kyle in Batman Returns. And the brilliant thing about the way that performance is done, and my God, Michelle Pfeiffer is so good in that movie. Mm-hmm. And again, a pretty drastic departure in terms of some of the characterizations from the comics in that Catwoman, but it works so well because of the duality of it. It's like she does feel like very like self-confident and bold once she's gone through the transformation, especially in the costume and sometimes out of it. But there's that amazing sequence when she goes over to Bruce's house for dinner and she's still awkward. It's like, yeah, she's been transformed, but like at her core, her personality is still kind of the same. And she still is a little bit bumbling despite, all this power. And that didn't really play with Barbara. It just didn't.
Yeah. So and then the next sequences, and I think this is why it lost me and why it didn't connect with everyone else. The next 3 times we see her, she's working.
Yeah.
And like that's when she's supposed to be losing her humanity because she like I guess didn't say thank you when someone gave her the drives.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, because it's her just like being very focused in work, and it none of that seemed unhumane to me. It was just like, oh, she's just very focused on like she's a professional. This is how she should be acting when she's working.
Yeah.
She should be very logical because she's a historian.
Yeah. It took too long for the effects, both positive and negative, for her to show through. Otherwise, she was just mostly the same character, kind of, except for like being a little more self-confident in the way she dressed for another 30 minutes.
You see her beat up the drunk guy.
Yeah.
Which like again didn't it in the fight sense was inhumane, but like it wasn't her losing humanity that made her beat him up. It was because she was still human that made him beat him up technically.
Yeah.
If she was if she'd lost her humanity, she would have just walked right by him. She wouldn't have interacted unless he would have interacted with her.
Yeah, it's her ego.
Didn't really.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of gets in there. So I didn't
like beat him up all you want. Like I love that sequence of just like honestly what I wanted, and I think it's probably too gross for a PG-13. But like she grabs his forearms, I was just waiting for her to like snap the forearms.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. She was strong at that point.
Yeah, that's how because that is inhumane. That's
yeah.
And then she sees like the homeless guy that she gives food to. He's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, what am I doing? I guess I am no longer human. I should become an apex predator.
Yep.
And everyone's most famous apex predator, the cheetah.
The cheetah. Would have been much funnier if she became a shark.
Polar bear? That would have been a good one.
That would have been much funnier. Yeah, overall, I was really underwhelmed by this. I was really disappointed by it.
Me too.
And there was so much good stuff in that first one, except for that last act. You kind of felt like that was mostly just studio interference. You're kind of hoping like, okay, maybe the second time around. Patty Jenkins is going to have, a little more creative freedom, and maybe she did and it didn't work. It's hard to know where the blame lies on this. It was delayed a whole bunch. I don't know. I don't know if this was still bad because it was made by committee or what, but there's nothing special about this at the end of the day for me. And like I said, I may have liked it more if I had seen it in a theater. I would rather have seen it even exactly the way it is in a theater. Because I feel like my perspective is compromised having watched it at home and having watched it with a big gap in the middle of the movie to go like eat and do other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, for me, especially like seeing it in a theater, it's that energy of like people that are also excited to see this.
Yeah.
And like when I have my stepdad walk out in the middle because he says it's too boring, that puts a bad precedent in my head.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, maybe this isn't a good film. And like, I don't want to think that in the middle of a film.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this movie would have benefited a lot from communal energy in terms of excitement, in terms of laughter. I think that if you were with a group who was also laughing at the occasional funny bits, those would have played better.
The White House fight, I think, is a funny sequence.
Yeah.
Where she doesn't let Trevor use his gun. So he just like, and it's the fact that they're like grabbing known like historical props of American history to beat people up. Like, I thought that was hilarious. And then that she's having to save all the people that Cheetah's about to kill. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. But it that doesn't land when you're just kind of watching it by yourself, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm very curious to hear what other people have to say about this.
Me too. Because going in, like the reviews, I hadn't read any reviews, but everyone was saying like, "Oh man, this is like the best reviewed DC film of all time."
It's just,
and I'm like, it's not.
It's really not. Yeah, I mean,
applaud to DC for doing what they do best, and it's underwhelming us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say where it falls in the this DC EU like stable because so much of it's so bad, and I've forgotten so much of it and haven't revisited so much of it. I think Wonder Woman, the first one, is still the best. I don't know. Maybe this is behind Aquaman for me.
Yeah,
I didn't love Aquaman, but it more or less worked, which this didn't really quite.
Okay, so question for you then, comparing it to Aquaman, would it still be behind Aquaman if Jason Momoa was wearing a shirt the entire time?
Damn you. You have found my weakness.
You're right. Yeah, then Aquaman is worse.
Yeah, all of a sudden I don't care about Aquaman at all. Why put a shirt on him? He's beautiful.
He's underwater. You don't wear your shirt in the water. If you do, there's no problem with that. I did that for probably 2 years.
Yeah. But if you look like Jason Momoa, like, why wear a shirt at all?
Oh my God, anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, look, I love that, his proper Aquaman costume, but could he just be wearing a Speedo instead? I think so.
Yeah. What if he just like walks out of the water and like he just flexes and like, oh yeah, fish scale doesn't like stretch well enough.
Yeah. It just all falls off of him. Yeah. Well, now I'm on board. Now Aquaman is the greatest superhero movie of all time. But I don't know. I mean, any other thoughts on this, really?
Not really. I think, Maxwell Lord could have benefited from understanding like what a child wants.
Yeah. I don't think the movie had a strong theme, and as a result, it just all felt a little bit underbaked. Mm-hmm. So, but Gal
Gadot still amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Even through this, she's still so amazing in everything she does.
She's great. She
Chris Pine,
great as that character. She and Chris Pine still have great chemistry together. If more of the movie had just been the two of them, I would have appreciated it more. But I think they gave us a lot of stuff we didn't want or care about, and not enough of what we did.
Yeah, I'm still intrigued in Kristen Wiig taking on more serious roles. I think she's still capable of it. I just don't think this was the right movie for her to try to be serious in.
I agree. Yeah, I think she's good. I think Pedro Pascal is good. I just don't think they're given the greatest stuff to work with. But I think they do good work with what they are given.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Yeah, but I am genuinely very, very curious what other people thought about this, especially, the DC fans that listen to the show. I would really like to hear your guys' thoughts and reviews on this. If it worked for you, if you saw it in a theater, if you saw it at home, which you would rather have done. There's a lot to unpack here. So let us know. And we're at Timm Talk Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Gmail.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm at Lordifer on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, and if you want to see my art, you can find that at Cameron.Dexter. And if you want to see my face from 2019, you can find that at CamDexter_adventures.
And we will be back next week. We will not be doing a normal DCAU episode. We're going to be doing our 2020 review. It's been an interesting year, so it'll be an interesting review.
Yep. So, we'll see if we can even make it to 10.
So come back for that next week. But thanks for listening, as always.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.